This show is proudly brought to you by the #Me Network. Access granted.
Kia ora, and thanks so much for tuning in to episode 51 of Access Granted, your weekly Kiwi tech and media podcast. I'm Mike, and my background is explaining stuff, connecting people and getting things done.
I'm Raj, my background's in film, design, media and technology.
And you're here because you're a Kiwi that either works in or has a great passion for tech or media in New Zealand. Episode 51, and this show will be catching up with worldwide cloud commentator Ben Kepes. Right, sustainable podcast.
How does a podcast become sustainable? Well, awesome content, asking for help,
That's us.
and being part of a greater network.
Yeah.
And we've always known that the #network was going to be a wonderful network to be part of, but we didn't know that the network Fid, Carice and Matt had started was going to win awards. Well, to be honest, no.
No, we
None
did
of
not
us thought
think
that. No. But Best Spoken Informational English Program Award was sponsored by New Zealand On Air. Yep. The winner, New Zealand Radio Awards on the May 21st.
So the guys won. I can't believe it. They won the radio Awards ceremony.
Yeah, a
They
podcast
won
run at the Radio Awards.
Best Spoken Information English Program Award. That is so cool.
That's through their Free FM radio channel.
Cool.
Right? Yeah, and next year, Fid was saying, hey, next year we're going to try and somehow get podcasts into the Radio Awards as a standalone thing, you know. Yeah. So a massive shout out to the team, and I think this is just the start.
Absolutely. Right, interview. We were extremely lucky to get an hour with the busy jet setter Ben Kepes. We'll let Ben introduce himself and explain how he came to be a regular writer on the prestigious Forbes website, and how he loves white papers, whatever they are, and how his grand plan is something to be marvelled at. Enjoy. We're in Biz Dojo, which is becoming Studio, I don't know, it's not 1, it'll never usurp Studio 1. It's Golding's Studio 3, Biz Dojo, and today, great pleasure, and finally, we've hunted down Ben Kepes. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. It's been a long time coming, as you mentioned.
It has.
I'm here now.
It's fantastic. And as you may know, we always start with a particular question. So, Ben, what makes you happy?
Actually, what makes me happy right now is I've got 2 sons, 13 and 15, and on a daily basis, I'm just incredibly proud of what amazing young men they're becoming. So, vocation's great, and professional success is awesome, and having some money in the bank is fantastic. But when these 2 little things that you created just become incredible, that's the happiest thing there is, really.
That's a fantastic answer. So you talked about vocation and the money in the bank, and so we won't ask how much that is. But at some point doing the bank, what is it that you currently do, call yourself?
So I do a bunch of things, and I guess I'm sort of generally involved in technology-ish. Got a weird background. I left school and did an electrical apprenticeship, so I'm not a technologist, I'm not in IT, or I haven't been in IT. Been involved in a bunch of small businesses, and kind of interested in how the world's changing. This morning I've been tripping around Wellington with meetings and stuff. Uber's everywhere. And it's amazing to think that 5 years ago there was no Uber, and we took cabs, and we had to fumble around for credit cards, and the people were really rude driving us, and all those sorts of things. And now we've got Uber and we take it for granted. So really interested how technology can be an enabler for changing the world, I guess. And so what do? I do a bunch of things. I write for Forbes, which is all very exciting. I do a lot of consulting around the place, and I work with technology companies, but I also work with organisations that want to use technology to change.
Yeah.
And I do a bunch of sort of angel investing, and do a lot of board work, and so lots of different things.
And the companies you invest in are on the boards. Are they all tech companies? Not.
Broadly speaking, well, kind of yes, kind of no. So I as I said, I did my electrical apprenticeship, and then I got involved in a little manufacturing company that is still going some 20-something years later, that makes backpacks and outdoor clothing. And so that's very much...
Yes.
Yeah, it's Cactus.
Yes.
It's very much not tech, but that's still going, and I'm involved with that, and do some property stuff. But yeah, most of my kind of angel investing is in technology stuff. Yep.
And so you were, I mean, Cactus, I think this is true, that was your job. You know, if I'd gone back 10 years and said, "Hi, Ben, what do you do?" You'd have said, "I run Cactus. This is what I do."
Yeah, that was my job, and so I, got involved with that with a couple of friends from when we were youngins, and I was kind of a managery, financial-y, kind of businessy, small business guy, and just kind of happened upon this technology.
So how did that happen? Yeah, it sort of went from A to B. I'm not saying that A necessarily has gone completely, but it was a thing.
Yeah.
Was it a thing, or was it a time? Or?
So those that are uncharitable would probably say that, I'm a bit of a gobshite, and I'm quite good at talking, and I've talked my way into this. And I wouldn't staunchly disagree with that, but I guess what happened in terms of the path that it took, about 10 years or so ago, a chap by the name of Rod Drury started a company by the name of Xero that we all know about now. And at that time was sort of when I was kind of starting my thing, and it was really interesting because there was none of that cloud stuff happening in New Zealand, and I sort of started talking about it primarily in the US because it wasn't really happening here. There's been some tension between Rod and myself over the years, but what's kind of interesting is to look at the arc Xero has taken and to look at my arc. My arc is at a very much lower elevation, but they've kind of paralleled a little bit.
So I remember you had a blog. That was really how I got to things. When back in the day when blogging was a thing, you know.
It was a thing. I was a blogger.
Oh, that's right.
So I when I was at school, and people who know me will find this so hard to believe, but I actually did debating. Not that I'm an argumentative chap, but I used to debate, and I quite enjoy words and ideas and concepts and stuff, and so I did a little bit of freelance writing for Limited Magazine and Idealogue Magazine and the Christchurch Press and stuff, and quite enjoyed it and found it quite easy, so just got into writing stuff, and it was pretty easy to set up a blog as I did, and it just kind of, I always reflect on Claudia Batten, who talks about her squiggly line in that her career has been this seemingly disconnected series of jumps here, there and everywhere, and I kind of have this philosophy that what technology and what modern life should bring us is the ability to explore and to let serendipity happen. And so there has been no strategic kind of path in my career or careers. While I was doing the Cactus thing, I was a paramedic in Christchurch for a few years, and I've been a firefighter for 17 years. There's no connection points between any of it, but it's all just fun and exploring new things.
Stuff that you do.
Yeah.
And so from the humble beginnings, I think I'm allowed to say that, of a blog that moved more, this is my view of it now, moved more into a website that then you offered services through as well as the writing. And so how did the consulting and the services and then how did that all happen? Was that, again, it just happened?
Yeah, sort of. So when I started, and this is about 8 years ago, and bear in mind that was kind of when Amazon Web Services first started, and Salesforce was only really young and small, and so there was no cloud was this new thing that no one had ever heard of, and
Web 2.0, mate.
I didn't Web 2.0, yeah, exactly. I didn't really realise that, and I just kind of started talking about it, and totally serendipitously, not because of any kind of skills of my own, I managed to build some kind of brand or following or whatever, and from that people see you and you become known and you get the opportunities to do consulting and stuff. So I never said, wow, I'm going to be industry analyst and write white papers and stuff like that, because I always remember the first time I heard the term white paper was actually from Rod Drury, and I had to go home and Google what a white paper was, because I had no bloody idea. Electricians don't have a lot of use for white papers. So it just kind of happened, and and who knows what tomorrow will bring. I might find a different vocation, and that's fine as well.
And is it fair to say from both the... We'll pause on that moment. So you did the... so we just had Raj join us.
Hello.
From the middle of nowhere.
or the middle of the Biz Dojo, as the case may be.
Just beamed in quickly.
This is how professional we are, Ben.
Absolutely.
Randomly, people will come and
I was
join us.
organising things in the background, and now I'm here.
Yes.
That's what we're doing.
So you're doing that, the website and the blog and the services, and I know that you were doing stuff in Australia with, I forgot the name of it.
Cloud Camps.
No, it was prior to that. There was that.
Oh, Stephen Orr.
Stephen, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I was one of the companies I was involved with. I was putting on events around Australia and New Zealand cloud camps, telling people about cloud.
Yes,
and
you're right.
And I was doing one in Melbourne, I believe, and this guy said I'd be keen to have a coffee, and he was the CEO of this really young company doing field service software. So if you're an electrician or a plumber,
That's right.
and you want to get your jobs and stuff, and that was really interesting to me because I was an electrician, or am an electrician, or was in the past life, and I really like seeing technology being applied to the real world because in this industry we're so keen to build the new whatever to deliver to developers, and whatever, that's exciting. But I really like when it gets mainstream adoption. So I started talking to him and kind of helped him out a bit, and then invested a little bit of money and joined the board. And about 18 months later, we sold that company to a US listed company. And it was all fantastic. We walked off into the sunset.
Was that the first investment? Were they? I don't know why I think that. Tech, IT one. I mean, I'm sure
I think
tech.
I think it was. I don't think it was my first investment. So I invested in a company. I'm not sure about the chronology, but I invested in a company startup in the US that was doing spend management. So basically, if you're an enterprise that's doing a lot of cloud stuff with Amazon or whatever, you don't know how many servers you have or what's set up or whatever, so they kind of give visibility over that. So I'm not sure whether Connector Field or Cloudability were first, but they were my early ones.
One of the early ones. And that came through, so the blogging, I'm creating the line for you, the squiggly line that's in my head. So obviously the writing. Let's go back. Why cloud? Why not?
Yep. So
mountain bike or running?
So good question. Well, I didn't run back then, so I wouldn't.
Oh, okay. Well.
So good question. Basically, with the cactus thing, I spent years using MYOB. I did all the financial stuff, and all our systems were paper based because there was no other option. There weren't tools to use for the stuff. And so when Xero, or even before they started pre-launch, I talked to them a little bit. And started thinking about it, and I guess writing about how technology could be applied to small businesses, and it just happened that at that time was cloud, and then so on and so on.
So it came from a need of being the financial guy, looking at surely this isn't my life forever. Then Xero, and then going, oh, this is interesting. There's not just. There's others.
Not so much that it came from this isn't my life forever and what's the next thing. More that I guess I like talking, and I had spent lots of time wrangling financial software. So rather than just getting pissed off and moaning, I thought I'd write a blog post, and then another blog post, and another blog post. Just came.
And then here we are, yeah. So then there was Cloud Camps. That's right. And that was a foray from New Zealand, Australia, and then, to be fair, you disappeared to the States an awful lot. How did that happen, come into your life as the market where you would find your order?
So I said before that I never had a career strategy, and I never have had. I mean, I was going to go and do medicine, and then I left school and did an electrical apprenticeship. So that's how strategic I've been. But I mean, one thing I would say is that when I started blogging, I remember back in probably 2007, I was invited to join this to help found this new blog in the US called Cloud. And they were like, yeah, it's cool, you can help, you can be a founder, and there was a company that was sponsoring that, Zoho, and everyone was going to be paid. And I actually said, no, I don't want to be paid because I'm not actually doing it for money, but I've never been to Silicon Valley. Actually, I don't know where Silicon Valley is. I needed to Google it. And so I
don't really know either.
So I said to them, look, I honestly don't want to be paid, but I'd quite like to have a visit to, I'd like to come out to a conference. So how about we work something out like that? And that's kind of been I guess if there's a common thing, it's that I've never really been focused on how can I directly monetize whatever it is I'm doing, but rather how can I, and it sounds kind of grandiose, but how can I use what I'm doing to learn something new or achieve something better or whatever. And it's kind of worked out, I guess.
That's very cool. Running in Rackspace at one point as well, wasn't it? Well, that was the university.
Yeah. Yes. So about, I don't know when, sort of 5 years ago, I was contacted by a guy at Rackspace who was a marketing manager, and he said, we need a little bit of material, some kind of a white paper.
Oh, wait, I was say white paper.
Woo. And I knew what it was at that stage, so I was like, okay, we need a white paper about something or other. And so I did that, and that went quite well. And then, I said to them that, back then there still weren't many people that knew what cloud was. I said, there's actually a need to do some kind of vendor-neutral education stuff. And that ended up being this thing called Cloud U, which was this education program and actually certificate that Rackspace sponsored, but it was vendor neutral. That was a series of webinars, reports, and an examination at the end, after which you got your Cloud U certificate. And I have no involvement with it now, but as far as I'm aware, like tens of thousands of people have done it. It's actually a requirement for all Rackspace employees, Cloud U certified, which is kind of funny. I was at a conference in Melbourne a few weeks ago, and there was a Rackspace booth there, and I went up and they said, hey, how are you going, whatever, and I said, oh, hey, it's good to see you, how's it going, and they said, oh, what do you do? And I said, I told them, I said, oh, actually, I did this thing, this Cloud U thing, a few years ago with Rackspace, and they're like, oh, we had to do Cloud U when we joined, so that was pretty cool.
Smiles, or did they all rushing towards you, going, it's you?
And the really nice thing about it is that the guy who initially talked to me about doing that first white paper, and then who kind of championed the Cloud U idea within Rackspace, was this incredible guy called Michael Ferranti, who was a marketing manager with Rackspace. And long story short, I was involved in another company. This one was based in the UK, doing some sort of infrastructure stuff that was growing and needed a VP of marketing. And it was really neat. What I love about my kind of role, what I do, is that I get to kind of connect people. And so now he is the VP of marketing at this, this company, Cluster HQ, and he's managed to, he's married to a French woman, and he loves good food and good wine. He now lives in France, and so it's really awesome that in a tiny way I've managed to help him.
That's fantastic.
Make it somewhere.
Yeah,
it's
cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just go back on something you said before, which was I'd like to see technology, anything but technology, actually being used in real people's hands, which is certainly a theme. For a long time we talked about it. It was like, yeah, that's shiny, that's a thing, but what difference does it make to the real people? Where do you see that conversation? Do you see that conversation happening anywhere? And if so, is it still one that you are frustrated by, but it's like, geeks, fancy tools?
So I'm actually a little bit torn. So on the one hand, my brother's a builder, and he builds these incredible houses for fat cat rich Americans or whatever that come and want a bolt hole in New Zealand for six weeks of the year. And so he gets home at the end of the day and he's built this incredible thing of beauty. I get home at the end of the day, I've written a blog post or a white paper. And so I'm torn by this thing that, what do we in this industry actually achieve?
Yes.
But then at the same time, something like Uber 5 years ago didn't exist. Today, it's bizarre. Like people, that go out, electricians that go out in town on a Friday night will get out their smartphone and get an Uber home. So I'm mindful that despite the fact that I don't do anything, the industry that we're involved with actually makes a difference. And for me, in terms of, because I am torn with that tension, I guess my way of getting over that is that I do a lot of sport, I do a lot of outdoor stuff with my kids, I build furniture and build my house and stuff, so I need to feel that I'm doing something substantive outside of my vocation, I guess, so I get over it that way. But that's just my personal struggle, and the fact of the matter is that technology does change the world. So, Uber's an example of that. It can change the world. It doesn't, it doesn't always.
So are we the industry, and New Zealand tech, I'm specifically talking about that. Are we better at making the things I'm like you, man, I don't do anything other. The things that they, and we're pointing at the Biz Dojo, who are lots of people tapping away now doing stuff, are they getting better at making actual stuff for real people, the builders, or are we still a little wanky about IT?
So,
my words.
I mean, a decade ago there was essentially no technology in New Zealand. I mean, there was, but it was, very, very nascent. And, Roger and I have had some public battles. That's all pretty obvious. Everyone's well aware of the previous tensions, but all credit to Rod. Essentially, single-handedly, he's built a technology ecosystem in this country, and no one can take that away from him. Are we better? We're better than we have been before. I think the question for New Zealand Inc. and for the government and New Zealand Great Enterprise and those sorts of things is it viable to think that we can build a technology industry in New Zealand that does essentially the same stuff as what people do overseas? So Xero's a good example of that. So Xero's fantastic, and love the product and love the company and whatever, but there's nothing in New Zealand that means that we can build a better software accounting product than anywhere else. And I'm concerned that we think that we can build generic solutions better than anywhere else. What I would like to see us do in New Zealand is to apply technology to what we do. And so, for example, an example I use quite often, there's this company down in Christchurch called Invert Robotics, and they make robots that climb inside stainless steel tanks. We're a primary production nation. We have lots of stainless steel tanks, be it viticulture or dairy, and regardless of the perils of dairy, we're going to keep having dairy, I'm sure. And so taking something that we're good at and applying technology to it in the same way that Gallagher fencing, other kind of quintessential examples of technology.
So not just tech, like consumer tech or business tech, but like things like ag tech.
I think
or screen tech, because
tech in context of what we do.
Yeah.
So it's applying it to things that we're already good at.
Yes.
Yeah, and then we do. And I think, so for example, we've got some big things here. Obviously agriculture, primary production.
Yeah.
Tourism has got huge potential, but or most people are concerned the fact that once we've sold off all of our high country stations and all of our beachfront real estate, we're screwed because there's nothing left to sell. So how can we apply technology to tourism in a sustainable and replicable manner, and something that's accretive rather than just merely using a limited resource?
It's a very good call.
No answers, just lots of questions.
Yeah. So we got lucky with Xero. When I say we mean NZ Inc. And Lux, whatever Oprah Winfrey said it was, 10% something, 90% something else. But we got lucky because it's not, as you say, financial packaging. There's no Kiwi bent to that. It's just a financial package. It does what it does. Expecting us to be able to do, can't think of anything else at the moment, but this generic is a hope.
It's outliers that can do that. So, for example, Xero, I believe, has been successful because fortuitously they managed to do their fundraise just before the GFC hit. So they managed to raise some money. They had some big names on board, on the board, Sam Morgan and those sorts of people, and Rod's done it before, so they were lucky that way. One that I hold up as kind of an exemplar of doing it kind of against the odds is Vend. And so if you look at Vend, I remember talking about the idea of Vend when the CEO, Vaughan Rousel, was riding his bike from Bluff to Cape Reinga, and he stayed at my place. And Vaughan hasn't had massive name investors or massive name board members. He's just done an absolutely fantastic job of executing, and so all credit to him. But I think that Xero and Vend are outliers, and I think if I was NZTE, I would less focus on thinking about how we can replicate those than how we can do something more in context. And that's no criticism at all of Xero or Vend.
No. So yeah, Because I'm looking at Biz Dojo, which is obviously, I don't know, I imagine that most, if not all of these companies in here are tech companies. I imagine they are. Whether anybody here is working on ag tech, no. If anybody is, no. Or screen tech, or is Webster in the corner?
Yeah.
Webster's over there.
Well, they're changing the industry a little.
Tourism tech, I don't even know if that's a thing that gets discussed.
It's interesting because there are a few companies. There's a crowd in Queenstown, I believe, doing like tourism booking software for cloud-based tourism booking software, and so that's probably a good example. But you're right, we are really focused because the coolest thing is software as a service, and so everyone's focused on that angle, and I struggle a little bit with that, to be honest. I mean, there's opportunities to do stuff that have worked elsewhere and to do them in market. So, Pledge Me is a good example.
Yes.
Probably if a crowdfunding platform can get to scale in New Zealand, then Kickstarter's not going to come, because why would they bother? We're such a small market. Kind of a trade me model.
So trade me.
Yeah.
So that's a valid approach, I think. Or maybe something, Lumio is a good example of taking something that's a little bit out there, a little bit different. Nothing that we've got specific kind of differentiation with, but it's sufficiently edgy to kind of be not a massively competitive opportunity, arguably.
Do you not think that Lumio, I was querying them and saying, are they trying to put a bit of Kiwi DNA into it? The way that they approach the collaboration and the way they talk is, and I don't know the answer. I was like, is this natural for them to make this because they bring a lot of Kiwiness into it?
Yeah, maybe that's sort of 2 degrees of separation, kind of DIY sort of.
Yeah, why wouldn't we have a
problem solving? Yeah.
Whereas in the UK, you might get the
more.
Well, we won't have this.
Yeah,
it's not,
potentially. Yeah.
So that could be a way of bringing the Kiwi in. Is that find the stuff that we find natural and we do naturally, and then recognise it, which is the hardest part, because once you're inside something, it's hard to look out of it and go, oh, that's what makes us different.
For sure.
And then find how that can be put into a tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the tourism tech, that's very interesting. So what next? What next for you and Ben? I don't mean in the next 10 minutes, but Luton Tie, I know what's next.
Yes, no, tonight I'm going to the High Tech Awards Gala and wearing a suit for the second time this year, I think. And actually the second time this week, which is even more concerning. It's a trend. What next? Short to mid-term, probably more of the same, lots of travel, some investments, some governance. Mid-term, I am doing more stuff here in New Zealand. I never used to do stuff here because I'm not sure why, I just didn't. But I'm getting more involved in helping out local companies. So I'm on a few boards here in New Zealand, but also doing some work with large organisations around technology, which is really fun because I don't have to travel so much, but also it's really cool to take some of that learning from my frequent overseas trips and bring it back here, which is really nice. So that's mid-term. Long-term, who knows, I've had lots of different careers, and
where that wiggle will go.
Yeah, wherever we end up is fine.
Yeah. Cool. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. One is, where can people find you? But before you answer that one, the companies, are there any companies that you're currently on the board of, the directors or investors of, that you really think our listeners should absolutely go visit? And the answer is all of them, I know. But
yeah, the answer.
How about we pick 3?
The answer is totally all of them.
Yeah.
So, so different sort of facets. So a good example is Mindscape, which is a local Wellington developer tool company that has this product, error reporting product called Raygun. And I invested probably a year or 18 months ago, and fantastic example of just awesome execution, growing awesomely. Now got a US office, all things going really well. Fantastic team. It's really, really good. So that's one in terms of
Mindscape?
Mindscape, and the tool is Raygun.io, Raygun.io.
Okay. Yes.
So then you've got other examples. A good example. There's a lot of talk about sort of serial entrepreneurs, and so people have kind of done it once and doing it again. So recently I got involved with a company in Auckland called Revert.io, and that was founded by Rick Chetwynd, who previously had a SaaS learning management system product, and he sold that to a US listed company, worked up there for a couple of years, and is now kind of coming back. And we talk about sort of rinse and repeat, and that gets overplayed because there aren't any kind of formulas.
As I say, yeah.
But once you've done it once, it does get easier. So pretty interested to see where that goes.
Revert.io.
Revert.io. So they do. They're focused on. So the thesis is that applications are moving to the cloud, but organisations are a little bit nervous about relying on their cloud vendor to do backups and things like that. So they're kind of a third-party platform to do your cloud backup. Okay. So if you use a cloud application, you can do your backup. So that's pretty cool. And then there's a bunch of other organisations. I guess one that I spend quite a lot of time on. I'm on the board of and I'm an investor of is Common Ledger, and that came out of the Lightning Lab a year or 18 months ago. And they're all about basically providing a layer whereby accountants can service customers using whatever software they need. So if you're using Xero or QuickBooks or MYOB or whatever, you can service that using whatever tool you want. And that's pretty interesting because it's an awesome bunch of people, and they've got a really neat sort of morality around the company. And I think that. I don't know.
That's an intriguing thing to say about a company. Yeah.
So I mean, maybe I'm a little bit of a hippie, but I'm mindful that we're on this planet for quite a short time, and I'm not overly keen to be involved with companies that screw people over in an attempt to execute. So I'm really excited. Or I guess I'm really happy to be involved with something where people are their kind of primary focus, and it's a whole new area, that sort of holacracy where we're going to have quite a flat structure, and everyone's going to be able to put their be part of a decision making process. Jury's out on how well it'll work, but I'm interested in watching it happen.
I'm not involved, but obviously got the Inspiral and that experiment.
Yeah,
it's a long-term experiment, but
yeah, for sure.
Years a change.
Yep.
Awesome. And where can people find you, Ben?
Where can people find me? On an aeroplane quite a lot, but in the digital world...
Still on the cloud, right?
Very good.
So I do the Twitters rather a lot, so I'm Ben Kepes on Twitter. And what I would say, it's really interesting that I'm just this dude that lives in rural North Canterbury, and I often get these sort of tweets from people saying, "Oh, I'd really like to talk to you about something, is that okay?" And I'd like you guys to shoot me if I'm ever such a douchebag that I make it feel like people aren't able to just flick me an email. So I'm always happy to chat, always interested in what's going on, and don't be a stranger.
Cool. Oh, I'll shoot you down then, don't worry.
I have no doubts that you would shoot me down, Mike.
And the same back. That's why we can do that.
For sure.
Thank you so much, Ben. It's been well worth the wait, and thanks for...
It's been a while.
Coming in
busy
and
guy.
having a chat. And say it like you've come in just for us, and you have really.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, mate.
Yeah, that was cool. I've seen Ben on the Twitters over the years, zipping off somewhere talking about cloud, etc. And what I found interesting was how many companies he's involved in or helping out. For a guy who says he doesn't do much, he has a lot on.
Next week we have Nick and Richard from Flying Coffee and what it's like to be a startup in a saturated market. We're sitting here in Mojo. We probably should be sitting in Flight, but you were when you were talking with them, I take it.
No, we're actually in Studio 1 at Goldings.
So we've got Nick and Richard from Flight, saturated coffee market, and we find out how they differentiate themselves, something we can all learn from.
Right, come to the end of the show again. Find us on the social networks. Look for the podcast on Twitter, Facebook and Google+. Or chat with myself at NZ Raj on Twitter or at Miramar Mike.
At Miramar Mike.
On the other Twitter. Please also, if you want to email us, on accessgranted@me.co.nz. and for all the other hashtag goodness, such as the updates, news, prizes, and much, much more, and our secret cheeky little award we won at the Radio Awards.
Yes.
Check out hashtagme.co.nz.
Don't hesitate to leave a congrats message for the awards. They totally deserve it.
Thanks for your time, and see you next Tuesday for the Kiwi Tech people sharing their own stories. Ka kite anō.
hashtagme.co.nz